I'm Trish Springsteen, and I'm here with you with Tips with Trish. And oh boy, do I love technology. It's one of those days. That's why I'm a little bit late. Today, I wanted to discuss assumptions and instructions. Now, this is something that comes up quite a lot when I'm speaking with my mentoring clients. And it's probably one of the biggest causes of miscommunication. And of course, we all know that when we have miscommunication, it affects us with productivity, time, money problems, and what I think is really important, loss of credibility. So if we want to try and reduce that miscommunication a bit, let's have a look at some of the things that cause it. And in this particular case, assumptions and giving instructions. So we all know about assumptions, and we've all heard of that, don't assume because you make an ass out of you and me. And frankly, that's actually quite a correct little saying. It's very easy, though, to fall into an assumption when you're not thinking about it, when you're not checking your responses and playing from a level playing field and being aware of who you are and how you respond to things. Firstly, let's have a look at this. Words mean different things to different people. And that's why when we're speaking about connecting with people, we talk about the nonverbal message, we talk about visual messages, because all of those help us to identify our perception of the words that we're using. For example, look, if I was to say, what does the word beauty mean to you? I'm going to get a myriad of different answers. For some people, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. For some people, it's how someone looks, whether they've got lovely hair. Some people, it's brilliant eyes. Some people, it's for nature. For me, I love beauty. Often comes the lights on the road after it rains. It looks so beautiful to me, and I can see that as beauty. So when we've got so many different perceptions and meanings to words, it very easily leads us into assumptions and miscommunication. Let's take another example. I'm 156 centimeters, which is about 5 foot 1.5 inches tall in the old style. And that 1.5 inch in people is extremely important, at least to me. So when I say that I met this very tall person, for me, that could be anywhere, someone from 5'6" to 5'7", 5'8". That's tall. However, if my friend who happens to be 5'7", to her, a 5'7", 5'6" person isn't tall. They're actually shorter. For her, someone who is tall is someone well over 6 foot. So I have to put some context around my meaning and my perception of the word tall. And that's where nonverbal comes in. I would say I met a tall person and I would use my hand to indicate it. That immediately defines where I'm coming from when it's tall, and everybody knows where we are on the same playing field. So I think the first thing I want you to take away, assumptions very easily can be you assuming that your perception of a word that I use is the same as my perception. In a business context, for example, let's take this. I want to have a meeting with you after lunch. Now, my assumption of lunch could be 12 o'clock. Your assumption of lunch could be 1 o'clock. We've immediately got a discordant response between us because we're not on the same level playing field, and we could have immediate miscommunication, which could lead to a lot of backwards and forwards. So my first assumption to you is be aware of words, be aware of the meaning, be aware of the context that you're in. Assumptions rear their head again when answering questions. Think about it. Someone asks you a question. Now, quite often we are so busy trying to think of the answer that we assume we know what the whole question is going to be, and we jump in to answer that question. And our assumption could be wrong. We may not have heard the correct question. We may not have heard all of the question. We may need to clarify. So there is an assumption when people are asking questions, that we assume too quickly that we know the question they want. And we jump in and give them the wrong answer. And then a miscommunication occurs again. And we have this backwards and forwards. So that again, we've got assumptions. Hi, Jackie. Thanks for joining. So the third thing of assumptions is assuming when we come from my speaking now, assuming the audience and the venue. Now, when we get asked to go and speak somewhere, there's a few assumptions that we can make. If we've gone and been asked to speak at a network meeting and we've gone there and then we're going to be asked to speak again, our assumption could be based on what our first experience was. And we thought, oh yes, this is where it was being held, or this is what happened, this is how many people were there. We could find that basing that on that assumption could lead us into a bit of a problem, because we could turn up and find, A, there might be more people than we had the last time, and suddenly we're speaking to a lot bigger crowd of people than we had, the bigger audience, or it could be that there is a smaller crowd of people because there is something else happening. We could be assuming that when we get asked to go and speak somewhere, that they're going to have all the equipment we need. We might assume, oh yes, everybody's got data projectors and displays, and we can use our PowerPoint presentations. Everybody's got that. No, not everybody has. Sometimes where we're going to be speaking could be a venue that doesn't lend itself to that. So we've made an assumption that could put us into a bit of a hot water when we turn up. We could be assuming that we're going to be speaking to an audience of all females. Nope, it could be a mixture. And we could be assuming we're speaking to an audience of all males. It could be a mixture. This is the problem where assumptions get us into a lot of hot water. We need to be thinking about, okay, just because something happened the same way last time doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be happening the same way this time. Just because I went to a network meeting where they had this particular venue or this particular format doesn't mean to say that the next time I go to another one, it's going to be the same format. Everything is completely a little bit different. So never assume. The other thing I like to talk about is we often are in volunteer organisations. Now, I'm in Toastmasters International. I've been in Toastmasters for over nearly 25 years. Now, in that particular time, I was extremely honoured to be the district governor for Toastmasters International for District 69 in Australia, which incorporates, for those, and just to give you a bit of a context, at that time was Northern New South Wales, Queensland, Northern Territory, and Papua New Guinea. That is a big area. And there was around about between 3,500 to 4,000 people in that particular district. That's 3,500 to 4,000 as volunteers. Now, we are often looked for people to do roles in our area. Now, this happens in all sorts of volunteer organisations, charity organisations, not-for-profit. The big assumption is we quite often, and I've heard it said so many times, don't ask that person to do that job. They're too busy. They won't be able to do it. Or don't ask that person to do that job. They've never done that before. They won't know how to do it. So don't ask them. Boy, is that the biggest assumption I have ever heard. That is making their choices for them. You are making their choices. Don't assume because people are busy or people are doing different things, don't assume that they won't step up and help you. Yeah, don't say, oh, I'm never going to ask that person to do this or to help me or to be a joint venture partner because they do things a little bit differently, or they're a lot more successful than I. They want to come and do a joint venture with you. Oh, never ask that person to come and speak at your conference because they may be not had enough experience, or they may not want to travel. That is making big assumptions. And that's making, from my perspective, people's choices for them. We can't do that. What we should be saying is, please, would you like to come and speak at my conference? Please, would you like to help do a joint venture with me? Please, would you like to take on this particular role? Now, that's all you're doing is asking. You have now left the choice and the decision where it should be, with the person you are asking. If they are too busy, they will tell you. If they feel they don't want to take it on, they will tell you. If they do want to do a joint venture with you, they'll say, great, Trish, I was wondering when you were going to ask me. If you ask them to come and speak somewhere, they may decide to, yes, I'd love to. Or they can say, no, I don't want to travel, or I can't do it at this time. if you make assumptions on that basis, then you're taking the choice away from the person of where that choice should be. And you could be a detriment to you having a great joint venture partner, you having a great speaker on a panel or great speaker at your conference, because you made an assumption, and that assumption could be extremely wrong. So when you want to have people assist you, maybe ask them for help them to take part in something, give them the choice of saying yes or no, because they're the ones that know whether they can do it, not you. And yes, people, it is so easy to make assumptions. We all fall into that trap. And even myself, I know better because I've been there and I've done that. And I've always got to stop myself sometimes and thinking, oh, no, Trish, don't do that. That's making an assumption and a choice. You need to stop that. You need to just ask that person and let them decide for themselves. You need to make sure you've got the whole information before you jump in and do something. So assumptions can be really important when it's conflict resolution, when we've got handling difficult situations. Finding out all the information really gives you a much better place to start from. And that leads me to the last little thing that I want to talk about, which is giving instructions. And this is where assumptions can really fall in. At all times, at some stage in your life, it doesn't matter whether in your family life, when you're in your business life, career, if you own your own business, you're going to be asked, you're going to find yourself in the position to giving some instructions. And this can be extremely tricky because we can make a big assumption when we're giving instructions. Quite often we assume that the person we're giving the instructions to is starting at the same knowledge base as ourselves. We assume they know the same parameters of time. We assume that they know that we might be finding it pretty urgent for them to do these things. And so we'll just give these instructions and we can walk away and find they may not get done in the time frame we wanted. They may not get done to the full response that we wanted because we made those assumptions. So people, how do we stop ourselves getting into this assumption trap? Well, very easily. It's thinking about basic communication skills. Clarify, question, check, and above all, be aware that there is an assumption trap. Be aware of how easy it is for us to make decisions for other people very quickly without leaving that decision based with them. So clarify. If you are not sure about the question that's been asked, if you're not sure about where you're going to be speaking or about who you're going to be speaking to, about the venue, about anything, if you're not sure what that person means, by all means clarify. It is better to clarify and make sure that you are all starting at the same level playing field, on that same level playing field, the same foundation, than to make an assumption and have time wasting, maybe loss of credibility, loss of money, loss of productivity, because we didn't stop ourselves from falling into that assumption trap. Question. When you're giving instructions, a couple of questions to say, hey, what's your knowledge? Or what do you agree? This is my time frame. This is what I want you to do. Or have you got that time to do it? Without making those assumptions, a few questions will give you a lot better base to start from. And check. Hey, clarify, question, and check. Very close together, but it is all. Once you've given some instructions, once you do that, check that they actually have heard those instructions. Check that your understanding is the same as them. And always, people, be aware that assumptions are so easy to make, but also be aware that it is just as easy not to make those assumptions. It all comes down to communication. It all comes down to speaking. It all comes down to respecting everybody's choice to make their decisions. You make your own decisions and think about it. Just put yourself in their place. Would you really want someone to make their decision? If you've been sitting there thinking, I'd love to speak somewhere, I'd love to speak to someone, and then discover that they never asked you because they assumed that you wouldn't travel. They assumed that you wouldn't want to do it. How disappointing is that? So don't do that to other people. That's what I wanted to talk about today. It's all about assumptions. It's all about instructions, and it's all about speaking and communication. So if you want to discuss how you can improve your speaking skills, your communication skills, just book a discussion with me. We can have a free 15-minute discussion, or if you've got something you really would like to plan, you can book a planning session for 1 hour, and those are $67, and they're done via Zoom. Of course, if you want to contact me and speak with me personally for an hour face-to-face or one day, you can do that too, and you can contact me. The link above is for you to book a free discussion or planning session. You can always PM me if you'd like to think about mentoring packages and one-day intensives to see how you can ensure that your speaking communication skills are always enhanced to be where you want them to be. I'm Trish Springsteen, Australia's leading expert in empowering introverts, international best-selling author, multi-international award winner, and radio host. And most specifically, here I am every Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. with Tips with Trish. Until next Tuesday, have an awesome time, and think before you speak, and avoid those assumption traps. Until next time, bye.